Okay, so Elad, I'm actually going to make some videos, and this one we're just going to do a little introduction to the Android Studio running on my Mac, and show some debugging, and I'm trying to explain a little more about this state stuff. This is a little different from what we're used to in doing the latest Windows programming, where we have page messages. So the first thing I'm going to do is, of course, I've installed the bits, so I can go here to File, New, and I can create a new Flutter project because I've installed all the Flutter SDK bits, and we'll just select the take the default Flutter application, and we'll give this someone some name that does not exist. It shows me the SDK path where all the Flutter stuff is on my hard drive. If it's not there, I could have installed the SDK. And my project location is in Android Studio projects. And then we hit next, and this just shows me my domain, which becomes only important later on. Now, we're going to create our project. This is just a default project right out of the box, and but it does have shows some interesting things about state. So we'll let this, and we're going to open this up in a new window. And so we loaded this. Now, if we actually run this thing, now you can see up here that we have no devices, and then it switches to, I think there's about three. Yeah, we have now two of these are in the simulator, and I happen to have my iPhone attached physically to my Mac with a USB cable, so it's showing up. Let's just select the one of the simulators. We're going to do a 5S. And now if we run this application, we just hit the run button here. The application will actually run, and we'll see this. This will actually do something. We hit the plus button, and it will increment this encounter. So we're really simple, but of course this came right out of the box and was done for us. Now, let's just take a little quick tour of this application. First of all, looking at the code, we have this import statement at the top here. That's sort of like an include in C Sharp, and we're just including the material.dart, which gives us access to the material styling. And remember, every one of these applications, every one of these Flutter Dart applications have to have a main entry point. And here's where we define it. This is a lambda expression, so that we have one statement, which is the run app, and we're going to, and it's going to have the parameter. We're going to start with the my app class, which is going to extend a stateless widget. Now, of course, if you're used to programming in C Sharp, extends, yeah, it could be just the double colon because we're just, our class is just based, our my app is just based upon stateless widget. And it has a build, and the build is kind of like our paint in Windows. So it's going to, whenever it's called, we will display things in the UI. And everything is attribute based here, or can be. Of course, we can unravel this if we want to, but right out of the box here, this is what is defined for us. And we look at my app down here at the bottom, it has a home page. Now my home page is defined right here, and it's extending this stateful widget. And this is where we get into the concept of state. This has a constructor right here, and it's using the syntactical sugar to set the title, which I take and tried to show you in the Dart part. And this, of course, we'll call the superclass constructor. So, and then we come down here to, we have this create state, and this is actually where we define our state. Now remember, state is key here, because instead of having something that we're going to, everything here is defined through changes to our state. The state's going to trigger our builds. And the way this works here, we have increment counter, which of course is going to change the value of this counter, and this becomes our state. So, and we look down here, this is actually the actual build, which will display the UI that I just showed you, and this is the app bar with our title and and we're using a column layout here, and we set our text here, and this is the value of whatever the value of our counter will be displayed here in the style which we have chosen. Actually, they've chosen for us. And with this button, this is where this button is generated for us and it has an on pressed action. So whenever an on pressed action, we'll call this increment counter. And so the increment counter function, which is right here, is going to do our set state. And whenever we get this this set state called, then it'll result in our build function being called, and we're going to redraw the widgets that make up our application. And of course, it's only going to selectively draw what has changed, so it makes this really fast. So when let's just put a breakpoint here in our set state. Now, when we see here. The interesting thing here, what set state is being passed an anonymous function. So we're passing this function to the set state, which will result in our build being called. So if we put a breakpoint here and we start our application in debug mode, this is the little debug button right here. So if I hit the debug, we will start up our application in debug mode. So now if we hit our plus sign, we're at this breakpoint in the Android Studio debugger, and we're at the increment counter function, which is going to set this state stuff in motion. So we're going to now there's the debugger has these little icons down here that control it, and one of these is the next statement, and the other is jump into it. And this is the resume button. So if we hit the next statement, we're going to take us to our set state. Now notice we're not directly setting our state. We're just going to be calling this, and we're going to pass. Our state function is going to be passed as an anonymous function to set state. Now, if we want to see what this does, we can remember, Flutter is open source. So as such, we can jump into this code and see what it's doing. So here we are in our framework, and we're calling our set state, and we passed it this callback function, and the callback function will be executed from here. So and this is where we're going to change our counter, and then we return control back to the framework, and the framework marks this element as needed to be built, and so it just fires our build method, and our widget tree is redrawn. Now, if we were doing this same kind of thing in say Windows within WPF, where we have an imperative style solution, we're going to have some kind of a button handler, and we click on the button handler. We're going to have some code which will just change the text for that counter, and then that part of the screen will be redrawn by WPF. Now but of course the stateful declarative style is totally different, and the code. And when I first looked at it, I said, "Blah! This is." I wasn't really pleased because you're just sitting here and you're setting attributes, and but I prefer. So what I prefer is to have a style that kind of looks like this, where I just took and refactored my code to look more, not only more like I was used to traditionally, but make my code in more digestible pieces. And it's especially important as our application grows. So in this case, my build method, I'm going to new up in app bar and assign it to my bar variable. And notice I still have to set my title in my constructor because title is a final. And then I create my scaffold object, and in here I'm going to assign my app bar. Instead of it doing inline, let's just assume that bar has a lot more things to set. I just set my bar variable, and then for my body, I'm going to call this make body function. So I move my center and my text code down into this make body function, which just returns my widget. Again, this is I think a twofold. It makes my code more in line with what I'm traditionally used to, and maybe I'm old school, but I sort of like that. But number two, I think as our file logic grows, I think it makes the code more readable. Now let's just take a quick look at how this hot reload works. It's actually pretty nice, and it shows you that really this thing is usable without a design tool. Although I think long term I wouldn't be surprised if we see one. Now let's just go in here and then change this text here, and let's just remove this part here. And as all we do is, we just got to bring this back. We're going to hit the up here. There's another button here, and this is the hot reload button right here. So if we hit this, it's going to be a very quick change to our UI. Unfortunately, I had to move it off screen, but believe me, it is lightning fast, as the icon shows. Now, the other thing I want to show you is just on a quick build here. Look at the structure of our project. Notice over here we have these folders. We have Android. These are the bits when we're building the Android version. Of course, remember this is going to run on both iOS and Droids. And as a side, I do most of my development I do on my Mac, and my target is iOS. But because I've got a .NET backend and that I want to test my server functions, I can only do those under Windows. Well, I guess I could have on the Mac, but I'm more familiar with Windows there. So what I load my project onto my Windows machine, which I'll show you later, and I can debug my backend. Now, but of course, I could build this with the Android emulator on my Mac too, if I wanted to. And then we have our iOS bits here, which will let us build the native iOS application. And by the way, it can either be with Material, or if we want it to be, we can make it look more like a standard iOS application if we so choose. Lots of articles on that. And we have this thing here called runner, which is interesting. Is we're actually, if you look what's actually built, remember we have to have Xcode, and the application this is actually will produce an Xcode project. So if we go here to our to reveal in Finder, and then we will see the just it went off screen. So here, if I click on this guy, we'll have Xcode, and this is the actual Xcode project that will result. Now, this is, and notice the name is always Runner, and it's set up now for an iPhone, and I do have my real phone attached here, so that would run. But this will become important later on when you have to know this part, when you want to generate either a test flight application, which by the way has to be in release mode, and then you have to produce that test flight from the Runner Xcode project. And if you hit the run button here, it'll result in that same application being executed on the iOS simulator of choice. Now, let's just flip back here to our project. There's another interesting, of course, we can set up all kinds of test here, which I did not do. Well, of course, I forgot. Our main main Dart code is under lib, and finally, interesting. They have equivalent to NuGet, and this lives in a thing called pubspec.yaml, whatever that is. I have no clue. But if you want to add here a new dependencies such as a video or HTTP, you then add your new dependencies here, and you will like I think I have, and then you can just either get the packages, hit this packages get, and it's much the same as you did with NuGet, and these dependencies are going to be added to your project. So I just wanted to show you this stuff because it's quicker than writing about it in the video, and I just hope that you can stand my voice and it makes some sense.